Hey everyone, welcome back to Paul and Benny. It's been a while, but we're so glad to see you. We're excited to bring you a miniature pecan pie recipe today that we are sure to love. You might notice things look a little bit different around here. Benny's behind the camera because we're experimenting with some different layouts, trying to do a way less editing and get you more videos before the holidays get here. So I'm sure Benny's gonna love that less editing part.
So much better. Oh my gosh. How long would I spend in the editing? Too long, right?
2 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours.
Oh my gosh.
You know, we're new to this, so we're making do with what we have. And Benny wants to make everything really, really nice. And I'm saying, let's just make something good to eat. So we're compromising.
Yes. All right, Paul, what are we making? Well, what are you making today? What am I recording today?
You are recording me making my signature miniature pecan pies, which we had a rustic cowboy birthday party for my dad last month, and one of his friends said it was the best pecan pie she's ever had.
Ooh.
I'm not bragging, but I get requests for them every year. So I want to share it with you so you can make your own.
This is going to be so delicious. I'm so excited for it.
I'm excited.
And it's good to give as gifts too, isn't it?
They're really good to give as gifts. I feel like mini pecan pies have a lot of advantages over whole pecan pies.
Mm-hmm. I love them because there's not as much filling. And I love sweets, but the regular pecan pies have a lot of filling in them.
So it's way less filling. I say it's a good nut to crust to filling ratio. So you get a really thin, crunchy crust with a whole lot of pecans and just enough filling to hold everything together. So it's not as sweet as you would think.
But it's still delicious.
It's still delicious, and it's still full of sugar and butter.
All right, well, let's get started, Paul. How do we do this?
You'll need 2 cups of broken or chopped pecans. You'll need a cup of sugar. You'll need a cup and a half of corn syrup, 4 eggs, 1/4 cup of butter, some pie crust. We're using store-bought. It's perfect for this. Some salt, some vanilla, and even a little almond extract. These little 3-inch miniature pie tins are perfect for these pies. They come in a variety of sizes, 2-inch, 3-inch, 5-inch, but these are perfect for single servings.
And don't forget your holiday spatula.
Ding! Ready? Let's make some pies. Okay guys, so this is super simple. We're gonna start with some corn syrup. Some people prefer light, some people prefer dark. Some people like to use half and half. You use whatever you want your pie to taste like.
And this is just, how much corn syrup do we need on this?
This is a cup and a half of light corn syrup in our case.
Awesome.
To it, I'm adding 1 cup of sugar. You'll notice I've got some white sugar and I subbed out a little brown sugar because I like a little extra caramely, warm fall flavor in there. And that's it for right now. We're gonna let this come to a boil. And when it comes to a boil, we're gonna let it boil for 2 complete minutes. And then we'll be back.
Nice.
So you can see this is starting to boil, and we're gonna let it boil for a full 2 minutes. The recipe typically calls for sugar. That means white sugar. You wouldn't wanna do all brown sugar in here. However, brown sugar adds some extra caramely flavors, some nice delicious notes to your pies that you just don't get unless you caramelize the white sugar. So we're kind of giving it a head start. You wouldn't want to use all brown sugar because then you'd have to boil it a lot more to get rid of a lot of the moisture. And you might risk burning your sugar that way. So if you want to sub out, say 1/3 or 1/4 of it, go for it. If you want to follow the recipe, do that too. So we've got about 30 seconds left on this. I'm telling you, it goes super fast. We're gonna add a 1/4 cup of butter. We're gonna add some salt and vanilla once we turn the heat off. So I'm gonna add our butter, and be careful, you don't want to bubble up too much. Thankfully it didn't. And we're just gonna melt that in there. And how can this not be delicious? It's a big pot of caramelized sugar and butter.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays. Hope you're getting a bigger sweater this year.
I know, seriously. But it just smells so good already. Oh my gosh.
It does, and that's one of the great things about using individual sized pies is you can give everybody one and it's portion control. You eat one a couple times a year, you're good. You have a whole pie sitting on the counter, you get a slice every time you walk by. So it's really good to make individual sized servings.
And by the way, I've already had some requests from people that they want like half a dozen of these. Probably for themselves, but still.
But still. Speaking of, since you're already boiling sugar and you're already getting a pot going, I would almost always recommend that you double or triple the recipe. Since you're gonna make a mess, make one mess, they freeze beautifully.
Oh.
You can keep them frozen for months. I stack them up and put them in a Ziploc bag, and they're super delicious. Just let them thaw out on the counter. Perfect. In here we have vanilla and almond extract. This is where if you want to add some bourbon, some Grand Marnier, any of those things, put a good tablespoon or so in.
Ooh, bourbon.
Ooh, careful. Yeah, bourbon.
That'd be good.
Bourbon makes it beautiful. We don't have any right now, so we're going with vanilla. Some people don't really love almond flavoring, and you don't want your pies to taste like that. However, just a 1/4 teaspoon or so gives an extra little something like, these are really good.
Wow, I'm gonna slow that one down.
There's an extra little something like, these are really good.
Finally, we're adding a good, healthy teaspoon of salt.
So I noticed that was pink Himalayan sea salt. Are you just that fancy, or?
It was the one closest when I reached for salt. You can use the regular old table salt. You can also use kosher salt. It's really up to you. Some recipes don't call for any salt, but I'm always extra. I use salted butter, and I still used almost a teaspoon of salt. Some people recommend against that, but I love for some salty in my sweet, especially with pecans.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes I even sprinkle a little salt on top. It's just so good to me, and it really brings out the flavor of the butter, of the pecans, of the crust. You can't go wrong. You've got 2.5 cups of sugar in here. You're not going to overdo the salt. So we're almost done. We've got ready-made pie crust, and I'm going to roll it out to make it a little bit thinner. Not only for a thinner crust in our pan, but so we can get a few more mini pies out of it than normal. So I'm just going to take my pie tin and I'm going to leave myself some extra room around the edges. Obviously, they're not perfect. They don't have to be. We're going to chill them for a few minutes to hopefully prevent the crust from shrinking in the pan when we bake it. But we still want to leave a little extra crust because we don't want it just to the edge. We want a little fullness. We don't want to be skimpy with our pies.
And who doesn't like a good crispy crust?
Right? Some people think crust is the best part.
It is the best part.
You think so, Benny?
Fight me. Watch what happens.
I always tell Benny, when I was a kid, I would pick off all the crust and eat the filling. And everyone would fuss at me and say, but that's the best part. And Benny needs to remind me every year that it's the best part.
Just give me all your crust, I'll eat it. Delicious.
We are going to roll this into a ball and make one more crust out of it.
Smart.
Later. So we're going to take our crusts and we're going to gently press them into our pan. We don't want to do a whole lot of pulling and tugging. We want to keep the crust tender, and we don't want to create any shrinkage that happens when you pull and knead on pie crust too much. So I'm going to fold it under a little. Don't have to. I'm just being extra again. A lot of times I just mash it down with a fork and make pretty little lines, and that's it. So I'm pricking the bottom a little bit, just so when it bakes it doesn't puff up too much, get an air bubble underneath. You don't want to make too big of holes because you don't want your syrup running down. However, you want to prick it just a little bit. And finally, this.
Ooh, the details.
The details.
This gives it that like homemade delicious pie feeling.
Yes. I'm going to admit something. I don't make the prettiest pies, but they might be the most delicious. I'm not bragging.
I'm not bragging.
You can definitely take a knife and trim up those edges if you want to. I just don't see the need to because Benny likes all that crust.
Leave that crust there. And that's that.
So I'm going to finish putting dough in all these pie tins, and then we're going to add our delicious pecan pie filling. Just rolling out this little bit of extra dough. It reminds me when my grandma would make pie dough from scratch when I was a kid, and she'd have leftover. And she'd give me a little ball of dough, and she'd let me make a little mini pie for myself. Or cut it out and just dust it with some cinnamon and sugar and throw it in the oven with the others. It's a nice little treat for me. You might notice I didn't roll out the dough with some flour. I just used a couple pieces of parchment paper because we're doing such a small amount. If I was making a big ball of dough and I was going to make full-size pies or a couple dozen of these, I'd definitely flour my surface to keep it from sticking. You can make 6 quick pies and there's almost no cleanup. So one part we didn't talk about. We do need eggs for our filling. Pecan pie filling is pretty much a caramel custard. We need some eggs in there to hold it all together, or else it's really just going to be a runny mess of sugar and some nuts and some crust. It should be delicious, but a mess. So typically you would temper your eggs with some hot syrup. In my attempt to make everything easy, fun, and delicious, we're skipping that step. I've just let the syrup sit over there cooling down for a while we rolled out our pie crust. And now I'm going to put my eggs in syrup that's not quite so hot. That way they're not going to cook. You don't have to strain it. You save a bowl, save a strainer, save a stuff.
All right. So we are back. We're ready to get this syrup going. So what are you doing, Bob?
So I'm stirring this up. A little bit of butter has gathered on the top. So I'm just emulsifying, combining, mixing it back in. Trying to sound fancy. Look at that caramel.
That looks delicious.
So now we're going to add in our eggs. And I'm shaking the table all up. And Benny's an awesome cameraman to make it stop.
Multitasking.
He's a multitasker.
Wow.
You really want to mix this well. You want to mix it until you can't see where the eggs stop and the syrup begins.
Nice.
Which isn't really that hard to do.
Don't
Did
spill
you
it.
see that?
I did. No, I didn't.
And now, for what makes it pecan pie.
Yes.
Pecans are extremely expensive, even though they're in season this time of year.
So you give this to people you love?
So I give these to people I love. And buying pecans at the grocery store, you can buy them already chopped, which is cheaper than buying whole pecans. However, if you go to Costco when they're in season and everyone's baking this time of year, you can get the big, I think they're 3 or 4 pound bags of whole pecans for cheaper than you can buy chopped pecans at the grocery store. So you just break them up yourself, and I like big old chunks. You can leave them whole if you want to, and then you look like you spent a ton of money on pecans.
So what are you doing now?
So I'm gonna fill these bad boys with some delicious filling. I'm going to start by try to get a good mixture of liquid and pecans for each one. We'll probably have enough to do a few more, but we're just gonna do what fits on this pan for the time being. And I'm making a mess already.
It's okay.
It's okay, you know why? Because they're so good.
Because it's worth it.
It's worth it.
That looks so good, Paul.
It is, and it's like the quickest thing. Like, Okay, I'm only making this big of a mess because I'm on camera. I would never do this when I'm home cooking by myself.
Sure, Paul. And don't forget to preheat your oven.
Preheat your oven to 350. You want it good and piping hot when you put these in.
Yes.
We're filling them pretty full, and when we get down to the bottom, we're trying to put more nuts than filling. You don't want to overflow, but you don't want a skimpy pecan pie either.
No, you don't.
And look, you still got a ton of filling in here. Most pecan pie recipes call for a cup of pecans. Well, this recipe calls for 2 cups of pecans because we want them chock full of nuts. Is it chock full? Chunk full?
I think it's chock full.
Whatever old people say on TV. The chunk full of nuts. And so, there you have it. We're going to put them in the oven. We have enough for a few more here. It's going to be amazing. So we baked our delicious miniature pecan pies, and they look amazing, but it was so late at night, we had to let them cool, so we didn't eat them. So we popped them in the freezer, till now we're ready to try. Benny? So
here is this delicious pecan pie. Look at that.
They're so pretty.
It is gorgeous. And then look how cute it is. Oh my gosh.
Look at, isn't miniature just better?
It makes it so fun and cute. And honestly, like, I don't feel as bad eating this thing as opposed to eating like a big slice of pecan pie. So this makes me feel better about myself.
It makes you feel better?
Yeah.
Well, if it makes you feel better, let's try it.
Yes, let's cut into this and give this a try.
Oh,
Just go ahead, Paul. Just go for it.
Look good.
Let me zoom in on that. Wow. Look at those pecans. It's all nice and cooked on the bottom.
I kind of crushed it. That's okay.
Kinda.
Can't wait to try it.
Awesome.
Benny?
So excited. Look at this. It's like perfect proportions.
Perfect proportions. You could go ahead and toast it back up in the oven if you wanted to, but we're hungry. We're eating.
Cheers.
Ding. It's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean to brag, but I'm not bragging. It's the best filling ever for pecan pie.
So Paul mentioned, like, the reason I love these mini ones is because the center on a regular pie gets really kind of like sugary, sweet, sticky. This is sugary, sweet, and sticky, but it's not overwhelming. It's so delicious. What did you say? The nut to filling to crust ratio? It's perfect. It's so perfect.
And it's not that weird gooey, huh? It's not like Jello-y or whatever that is. It's like caramely.
Caramely.
It's so good. That crust, so thin, so light.
But oh my gosh. And the pecans toasted perfectly. They're all sugary and sweet. And the top ones have like a nice sugary crust. The ones on the inside are still like nice and like nut flavored, nut tasting. A lot of nuts in here. And then the crust is actually really, really nice. Like Paul said, we could have warmed it up a little bit to get that crusty texture. But this is just perfect as is. Breakfast, coffee. I need coffee with this.
Then he always needs a coffee. It's perfect, right?
Good job, Paul. Round of applause for Paul. Round of applause.
The thing is, pecan pie doesn't have to be difficult, right? These are so easy. 30, 40 minutes tops, includes baking.
So if you love this pecan pie as much as I did, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. 3 simple steps so that way you get notified when we make these delicious, when Paul makes these delicious goodies for the holidays.
As always, I'm Paul.
I'm Benny with food in his mouth.
We're grateful for our food.
And we're grateful for you watching.